Hey there, reviewing while driving. This is Gene again. Welcome back. I am doing my Game of Thrones post-season 6 character study and analysis, and I would like to turn to everybody's favorite brooding northerner, Jon Snow. Or should we say Jon Targaryen? So, the purpose of these videos is to sort of go over the overall story thrust and character arc of some of the more interesting characters in the show. And for Jon Snow, his heritage has basically been his story. And it's only through the evolution of his story that he's kind of got a sub-arc that's layered on top of his heritage story. But his heritage story is central to not only his backstory and his history, but actually his own experience on the show and how he interacts with other people and what his way is in the world. And so I want to get into that, even though it's somewhat of a one-dimensional story, right? And in a way, he and Daenerys share that. I mean, Daenerys' story is one of not so much developing her character, but so much advancing her plot of getting to Westeros with her army. So it's not so much of a character arc there, but for Jon, it's about like, who really is he? It's a sort of a self-discovery character arc for Jon. So let's discuss. Now, on the very first episode, we are introduced to Jon as the black sheep of this noble northern family, the Starks. And he is sort of moderately to mildly resentful of his bastard status. Now, he loves his family, but he obviously is sort of getting kind of mixed signals, right? I mean, from his father and some of his siblings, he is treated as a Stark and an equal in every way. But from his mom and his brother Robb in particular, he is definitely treated as a second-class citizen. And so he kind of doesn't really have anywhere to go with his story when we first meet him, right? I mean, he's never going to be the Lord of Winterfell. He's got, three true-born half-brothers that are going to take over it at that time, right? You got Robb and Bran and Rickon. And, he's not really going to be marrying, some high-born woman. So where's he going to go? At the time the show starts, there's no active wars. He's not going to, distinguish himself in battle and somehow, conquer his own land or become a lord by his own, might. He's not religious. I mean, he's being raised as a nobleman and learning his letters and, learning how to fight properly and, shoot a bow and ride a horse. And, I mean, he's learning all these lordly talents. So he's got all these talents, but really nowhere to go with them, nothing to do with them. I mean, Robb certainly has those, has a reason to learn those things. But so why does Jon, right? Well, it's just because Ned wants him to have those skills, obviously. But he doesn't have anything to do with it. So it makes sense from a character perspective of, okay, well, yeah, I guess I have nothing to do with this, so I want to be something and be somebody, so I'm going to go ahead and join the Night's Watch. I'm not going to get married anyway to anybody worthwhile. I don't want to create more bastards, right? I mean, we learn that later with Ygritte of why he's still a virgin. And so I'm going to just go ahead and devote my life to this noble cause, and my brother Benjen did it, and, this is a way that I can bring honor to myself and to my family, and it's the noble and honorable thing to do. And almost kind of a patriotic duty. I mean, this is like a guy, kind of like Charlie Sheen's character in Platoon, who is essentially enlisting voluntarily into this duty he doesn't really fully understand. he goes over there and immediately, of course, gets disillusioned by the, all the criminals and rapists and just bad people that are part of the Night's Watch. But he doesn't know that at the first. He thinks, kind of like Sansa, naively, he thinks, okay, this is going to be my my way through the world as a member of the Night's Watch. He's going to take the black. And so there's some important interactions, though, that launch Jon's character arc. And I can think of 3 offhand. They're with Ned and Catelyn and Tyrion. Now, Ned has been very consistent with Jon and treated him just like a son and like a Stark. He acknowledges that he's not his trueborn son, but in terms of how he treats him, his role in the house, Ned never treats him like a second-class citizen. And so Jon's personality and his character and his motivations are pure Ned. I mean, he may not be Ned's boy, as we later learn, but he's got Ned's heart. He is like Ned reincarnated in terms of his how he thinks, how he acts, what's important to him. There's a few minor differences, but he is cut from Ned Stark's cloth, for sure. The second major interaction is with Catelyn, and that's basically this reminder and real kind of mean-spirited, just kind of viciousness that Cat has about his existence. And yes, Ned tells her, for Jon's safety, we later learn, that Jon is Ned's bastard and not the son of Lyanna. Because that information is just too hot to handle, right? So Ned keeps it from everyone, including his wife and Jon. Well, as a result, though, Catelyn is extremely resentful that Ned comes back with a new baby when he's already got another baby, with Robb. And I mean, it hurts her. And she, there's a scene where she wishes for Jon Snow to die, and as things started happening to the Starks, she apologized to the gods, but she never could bring herself to really love him. And he's just a baby, it's not Jon's fault that he was born, right? Even if he was Ned's bastard, how is that his fault? I mean, that's like blaming Tyrion for his mother's death during child support, during childbirth. When Tyrion's mom dies in childbirth, how is that Tyrion's fault? It's not his fault he was conceived, and it's no more than it is Jon's fault. So there's this real sense of he's reminded of his bastardy on a regular basis by this person who is in his mother role. How horrible. Now, the only good news about that, I suppose, is that it did toughen him up somewhat for other people's reactions to him once he left Winterfell about being a Snow, being a bastard. And so it made it, I think, a little bit easier to take, being at the wall and hearing, Alistair and Janos Slynt berate him for, being Lord Snow and being a bastard and all that crap. So, but the third major influence we see very early on is from Tyrion, and when he meets him in the courtyard there and says, you're a bastard, own it, wear it like armor, just like I'm a dwarf, and they can never use it against me because I accept that I'm a dwarf. And I think that's very powerful, and the fact that he and Tyrion have that kind of weird bonding, and then of course later they go up to the wall together out of Tyrion's intellectual curiosity, to see the wall, and they have a shared moment or two like that where I think it really kind of allows Jon to dispatch of some of his resentment, of all the cat-related resentment, about being a bastard, and really just to accept it. And what that does for Jon is it allows him to fully embrace his role as a member of the Night's Watch. So he's able to get over the, I'm never going to marry, I'm going to be celibate in theory. I'm never going to own lands or be a lord. I'm never going to get legitimized and be a Stark. That's never going to happen. I'm just going to, this is my way through the world. And so I think Tyrion really helps him to get there and to be in that place. And so then the bastard heritage is always there, and it's a constant reminder. And Ned promises him, okay, next time we meet, we'll talk about your mother. Well, that never happens because Ned never returns from King's Landing because he's killed by Joffrey. So there's just this big emptiness in Jon, and he accepts his duty to the Night's Watch. And so from that point on, Jon's character, up until his death at the end of season 5, basically from I would say the middle part of season 1 until the end of season 5, it's about Jon discovering who he is other than a bastard, right? I mean, that part he's accepted, but what else is he? Well, I don't think he really appreciates, until he gets to the Wall, how special his upbringing has really been. He's got this incredible training. He's a natural-born leader. He is, people like him. He leads from the front. He doesn't ask people to do things he won't do himself. He is genuinely supportive and caring about other people. Jon Snow is a good dude, and he doesn't even realize how, kind of like Sansa, because he's been sheltered too in Winterfell, he doesn't realize how unusual his goodness is. And it's rare. I mean, the Starks get a lot of grief for being naive, okay? And they make some bad decisions because of it. But by golly, they are good people. And people like good people. And that's what Jon and other people, including Lord Mormont, they see in him. And that's why Mormont names him one of the stewards, even though Jon wants to be a ranger and go out beyond the wall like his uncle. No. He's meant for more than that, and Mormont knows it. Mormont knows it when he sees it. He's got it. Jon Snow has it. And so Jon does things, volunteers for things, puts himself at risk for the betterment of others. He and not just the members of the Night's Watch. I mean, I'm talking about the wildlings. I mean, other than Mance Rayder, he is a guy who, at the risk of going native and with Ygritte and befriending Tormund and the other wildlings, I mean, he embraces this idea that, okay, we're not all that different. We have a common enemy. I've seen the White Walkers. We need to be on the same side. I mean, talk about a mind-changing realization. So Jon's got this bigger vision of how the world could be and what's really coming. And so without even really wanting to necessarily be a leader, I mean, he didn't, when Mormont died, Jon didn't push to be the Lord Commander. He was nominated by Sam and the other members. And he got elected not because he wanted it, but because he was the right guy for the job. And sometimes the right guy for the job is the guy that doesn't want it, It's the responsible one who's going to do the right thing. He had it thrust upon him, and he accepted it, and he did the very best he could with it. And they killed him for it. Okay? So, up until his death, Jon is discovering who he is, and he is duty-bound, and he is Ned Stark in crow's clothing, okay? That's how he is and how he acts. And so, when he's killed for it, at the beginning of season 6, when he is brought back to life, and he says he was killed, and afterwards there was nothing. There was no light, no gods were there to greet him. He was just not alive, just blackness, nothing. And even though he's been brought back to life, inside he's still dead. and his reason for living has been taken from him. He was betrayed by his brothers. The people who he swore a duty to killed him. Where does he go from here? What can he do? And that's when he meets Sansa. And this hasn't really been developed yet in the show fully. But I truly believe that if it weren't for Sansa, Jon would not be where he is right now. Not because of the Knights of the Vale thing, but because of he had to readjust his identity again. That he's no longer a member of the Night's Watch. He can't be. He was killed by them. His watch has ended, right? I mean, he fulfilled his vow. His watch ended, and he essentially says, I'm out of here. I mean, they execute the traitors, and he's gone, right? And so there's this idea that, and he doesn't even know it, and this is what made the finale of season 6 so great, when he is essentially pressed into service as the King of the North, for Christ's sake. All he knows is that he needs to do the right thing by his family, and that's triggered by Sansa, and it's triggered by the letter from Ramsay, right? The taunting letter from Ramsay. Come and see the Rickon. Come and see your home, Winterfell bastard. Come and see. That letter, that taunt, reignited that sense of duty in Jon. Is he doing it to get revenge on Ramsay? He's never met Ramsay. Okay? Sansa has a lot more personal reasons to be against Ramsay. Jon doesn't know Ramsay Snow from Adam. Okay? No, this is about, okay, now you fucked with my sister, you fucked with my brother. We're going to take care of this. And oh, by the way, there's no way in hell that the Boltons are going to be helping out with the Night's Watch and, against the White Walkers. So we got to unite the North here. We got this giant problem, and this bastard in Winterfell is standing in the way of that. So Jon starts to realize that he has a role to play, and Sansa again empowers him. She gives him the cloak that she had made for him that was reminiscent of Ned Stark with the fur. He looks like a noble. He is a Stark, and she even says to him in the finale, "You're a Stark to me." I think that's clear in her actions towards him this season. Even though she didn't share with him the bit about the Littlefinger and the Knights of the Vale at first. He's being brought back in, and he's getting that validation as a Stark, essentially, that he never got before, and he wouldn't have accepted it before. And if you remember, Stannis offered it to him last season. In season 5, Stannis says, "Hey, give me your men. I need a Stark in Winterfell. I'll make you Warden of the North. I'll legitimize you as a Stark. I'm the king, so I can do that." Stannis laid it all out there for him, and Jon said no because of duty. So the only person that could really offer that to him were his own family, like Sansa, and the men of the North, who he had just befriended and fought alongside in battle. After being shamed by a little Lady Mormont, right? So Jon's his death created this opportunity for this new identity for him, and this new realization that of what he can do, but he still isn't seeking it. Even after the Battle of the Bastards, he says to Sansa, "Hey, you're the Lady of Winterfell. I'm going to have Mother and Father's room made for you." He insists on it. He acknowledges the social realities that she's the trueborn eldest Stark, and she needs to be the Lady of Winterfell, period. So he's not grasping or seeking anything. All he wants is to help, is to be the Paul Revere of the North and say, "Hey, look, winter is here. The White Walkers are coming. we gotta band together and fight him. So it's that natural leadership that he has, that's not born out of a desire for power or grasping like Littlefinger or Cersei. This is a guy who is genuinely interested in banding together to solve a problem. And so everybody knows who he is by what he does. There's not a single sane person who interacts with Jon Snow and after being around him and seeing what he does, that doesn't say, holy cow, this guy's got it. And if that isn't kind of another backdoor revelation that he's Rhaegar's son, I'm not sure what is, because from all the stuff that's come up about Rhaegar, and even just on the show, I mean, he was an exceptional person that was well regarded by everybody. Even though his dad was a complete nut, Rhaegar was extremely well thought of. And so I don't think it's a big stretch to see that, Jon's got that factor too. He's got it even more than Ned, I think. He's got Ned's personality, but in terms of the it factor and that natural charisma and leadership, yeah, I mean, he's got it. So, but the funny thing is, he's like the beautiful girl that doesn't know she's beautiful. Jon doesn't see himself that way. In his mind, he's not deserving of that. He's just a bastard. And it's only at the very end of season 6 when they're shouting, "The King in the North! The King in the North!" And he stands up and he accepts that, what can only be described as a burden. I mean, he's moved, obviously, and he's affected by it. I think very much like when he was named Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. But this is not like he's going to spike the football now. This is an understanding of, man, I got a lot to do. This is a big undertaking. And, he was appreciating the gravity of the moment. I mean, he's not running around giving everybody a high five. Woo, I'm the King of the North. I mean, that's not what he's about. So, from a character perspective, then, Jon's development is one of acceptance of his bastardy, and then acceptance of his gifts, and one of seeking out a duty and a way to fulfill his duties in the honorable Stark way. He is probably the least selfish person on the entire show. I'm struggling to think of somebody who might be like him, possibly Brienne. I mean, they're very different in temperament, but you talk about a selfless person, that's Jon Snow. And that's why people want to fight for him, and that's why they're willing to die for him. And, even for the Lords of the North that didn't even know him until that meeting, they couldn't help but be floored. Like when Glover asks him for forgiveness, Jon Snow replies back, "There's nothing to forgive." Okay? That's not just powerful emotionally. That is a response of somebody who gets it. Like, I understand. You had a reason not to join me. You were afraid. But fortunately we won. So forget all that stuff and let's get on the same page. Okay? So I'm not saying this just out of admiration for the character, because we all love Jon. I'm saying it out of a sense of development, that he knows now that he's part of something that's bigger than him, and he doesn't really care about his own role in it. When he tells Melisandre before the Battle of the Bastards, if I fall, don't bring me back, he's not saying that out of a sense of melodrama. He's saying that out of a sense of, I've got, this is my last crack at this, and I've got something, if I've got something more to give, then I guess I'll live. I think his answer might be different now, maybe, because I think he sees that there's a opportunity for him to do something special. don't know. Maybe he would accept being resurrected again if it was necessary. But I'm fascinated to see what happens for him. I think that his arc is one of self-acceptance and self-realization is what I would describe. And so I think the most interesting part, from a sense of completing that arc, is him becoming aware of R plus L equals J, right? That Rhaegar is his father and Lyanna is his mother. And I don't know how he's going to become aware of that exactly. I mean, there's only about 2 ways he can do it. One is from Bran, and one is from Howland Reed. And that's it. I mean, there's nobody else who has personal knowledge of this. So he has to be made aware of it, and he has to be able to believe it. But once that happens, that'll be another step of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and kind of taking his place. And if he does end up, on the throne, or marrying Daenerys, or even marrying Sansa, which I guess is possible, his reason for doing that is so that he can take on an even bigger obligation and serve an even bigger role and serve others, not because he wants to, be more powerful. It would be sort of him coming full circle on that whole birthright thing that he was denied in the first place by being a bastard of Ned Stark. But he's really not Ned's bastard. And so that's the irony, is that if he does find out, and if it becomes generally accepted that he is Rhaegar's son, and that possibly that Lyanna and he were actually married, so he's a legitimate Targaryen. If that's true, then Jon will have ironically accepted his bastardy, but not be a bastard at all, and be first in line for the throne, because all the Baratheons are dead and Cersei just usurped power. So I'm fascinated to see what happens with Jon. I think that how he learns about his heritage is going to be fascinating, and what that means and how that changes his relationship with other people, specifically with Sansa, but also with Daenerys, assuming that they meet at some point. So please leave your comments below. I think Jon's arc is probably more straightforward than some of the other arcs I've discussed with the characters, but it's still, I think, fascinating that that they've been able to do so much with essentially one story of who is Jon and what can he be. That story of Jon has been handled brilliantly, and really until this season with R plus L equals J, it's been done very indirectly by his actions and just by the moving of the plot forward. And now he sees what his role is, and it's actually even bigger than he even knows it as of now. Thanks for watching.